A shoe salesman was sent to a remote part of the country. When he arrived, he was dismayed because everyone there was barefoot. He wired his company, "No prospect for sales, people here don't wear shoes." Another salesman from another company came to the same territory. He too immediately sent word back to the home office, but his telegram read, "Great potential, people here don't wear shoes." Everything depends on our perspective. Throughout our study of Philippians, we're going to see that Paul's reoccurring theme is joy. 20 times in these 4 short chapters, we read words such as joy, rejoice, thanksgiving, content, and peace. Yet Paul's circumstances were not the cause of this joy. Being chained to the wrist by a rude soldier, day and night, sleeping or waking, must have been a very trying experience. This imprisonment put an end to his international missionary journeys. To a man of Paul's tireless efforts and energy, prison had to be intolerable. And on top of this, month after month dragged by for over 2 years, and he still didn't have a verdict. Justice delayed is justice denied. And keep in mind, Paul was in prison not for committing a crime, but for rather simply preaching the gospel. Yet in Paul's letter to his friends in Philippi, there is not a single word of bitterness or complaint. How can this be? Paul did not focus on his circumstances. Rather, he kept his eyes on eternity. And this is the prescription for joy that will work for us as well. Philippians chapter 1, verses 12 through 14. "I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the entire imperial guard, and all to the rest of my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having been confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear." Paul's first reason for rejoicing is that his imprisonment is making the gospel advance more widely. Paul looked at his circumstances from God's perspective. Paul didn't ask, "What is going to happen to me?" Instead, Paul asked, "How is what is going to happen to me going to affect the gospel?" His convenience and his comfort really didn't matter to him as long as the gospel advanced. Paul looked past his current circumstances and bloomed where God planted him. The Imperial Guard were 10,000 hand-picked soldiers who were a combination of the Secret Service and the Navy SEALs of their day. They answered directly to the emperor, they received double pay, special privileges, and when they retired, they got large land grants on the edge of the empire. They became so powerful in later years that the emperors had to actually court their favor. Paul was under around-the-clock guard by these imperial soldiers. Every so often, one would relieve the other one. As tough as it was on Paul, think of the poor soldiers. How would you like to be chained to this guy by the wrist, day and night, a Bible-thumping Jesus freak? You could almost imagine the reaction of Paul. First, there was surprise and disdain, and then, as they watched his life, and they overheard his strange teachings as he dictated these letters to distant churches, you could see them taking notice of his patience and his gentleness and his courage, and most of all, his unswerving loyalty to Jesus Christ. Finally, they started coming to faith. Then the gospel spread from guard to guard, then from the guards to their families, then to the servants and the soldiers who worked in the palace, and then finally to the rest of the inhabitants of Rome. Paul's case and the cause of Christ became the talk of the town. This advanced the gospel. We may not get to choose our circumstances, but we do get to choose how we will respond to them. Oftentimes, limitations are the times of opportunity. Paul used his restriction and confinement to minister to whoever God put in front of him. In this case, it was the guards. And because of this, the brothers in the church at Rome took courage from Paul's example. Who are these brothers? The church in Rome had been established long before Paul ever got there. It was founded by the Jewish converts to Christianity who were present in the city of Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost. These were the people who heard the gospel directly from the apostles, fresh from the upper room. By this time, the church at Rome had also included many Gentiles who converted to Christianity. It was this church that Paul wrote his theological magnum opus called the Book of Romans. And now from this prison cell, Paul continued to influence them. And the way he handled his imprisonment encouraged and emboldened the brothers to preach the gospel with all courage. Is this how we typically handle our struggles? How we live our lives, especially during difficult times, affects everyone around us. Courage is contagious during a crisis. Paul's example spread new zeal and fiery devotion throughout the Church of Rome. The devil sought to stifle the evangelistic work of this great apostle and stop the advance of the gospel, but Paul turned the roadblocks into stepping stones. Because of his eternal perspective, he was able to turn the attention and minister to those who God put in front of him. And by so doing, he wrote letters to his friends that now constitute most of the New Testament. When Goliath challenged the army of Israel, Saul's soldier thought Goliath was too big to kill, but David thought he was too big to miss. The difference was a matter of perspective. Let's keep our eyes on the eternal destinies of our souls, and we can have the same eternal joy that King David had when he said, "The Lord is on my side, I will not fear. What can man do to me?"